Okay, today we'll just have a quick look at some forward kinematics and reverse kinematics. I've set up a simple scene. It's got 3 spheres and it's got 3 tubes in it. And what we're going to do is going to create a bone that brings these together. So add the bone, armature, single bone. Move the bone into position over the first sphere. Just rotate that in the X and then go into edit mode and extend the bone so its tip is at the first sphere. Extrude from there and extrude another bone out so the tip is at the second sphere. It doesn't have to be hugely accurate. Extrude again and make the tip of this one just extend slightly over the end of this final tube. Now that we've done that, we need to select the set of objects that we're going to parent to the bone. So there's all my objects selected, and then select the bone last. So it's important to select the bone last because that's going to become the parent object. So Control P, and we could just do to the bone, but we're going to do with automatic weights. You'll notice that now there's a slight movement as it aligns itself with the bone. What we have here, if we deselect that, is forward kinematics. So we go into pose mode down here and select the last bone and rotate that bone. You can see that the mesh is being deformed and the end, the tip, is moving in line, the tube is moving in line with this end bone. If we then select this bone, the one closest to the left, and rotate that, we'll notice that the whole thing is moving in sync with that bone. So we can move any of these bones to a position. We can move the middle bone and rotate that. We can grab them as well, but I'm not going to grab them. So we can move any of these. This is forward kinematics because the motion is transmitted forward through the bone. However, in some situations what we'd like to be able to do is to set this tip of this object and determine, let it work out where these other points should be, and that's called reverse kinematics. So let's just set up the reverse kinematics. So first thing what we need to do is we need to have some sort of target. So if we go back to object mode, deselect that and add an empty. An empty is just something that we can grab hold of. I'm just going to scale that down a bit so it fits on the screen. Just something that we can grab hold of, and I'm going to add that to the right hand side of the object that we've already got. Select the bone, go back into pose mode, select the bone, so go back into pose mode, select the bone, and then we go up here to the bone constraints, and we're going to add a constraint to this right hand bone, and then we're going to add an inverse kinematics constraint, and you'll notice that it's red at the moment, so it's not set up correctly. We need to select a target, which is going to be this empty that we've just added. So add the target, which is the empty. You'll notice it goes green, and the tip of that bone now attempts to point to this target. The only other thing that we need to set is the chain length, and there's 3 bones in this chain. If there were further bones but we only wanted the last 3 to move, or the last 2 to move, we'd set the appropriate number of bones. In this case we want them all to move, so we'll set them to 3, and you'll notice that the line now extends down to this point on the first sphere. So now we're in a position to move something around. So if we go back into object mode and select the empty, if we move it down, we'll notice that everything follows quite nicely. Now the interesting part is if we move this towards the armature, and what happens is that because this tip is trying to follow the empty and there's not enough room, it calculates a spline between the tip and the root of the 3 bones, and that spline is then plotted, the other objects are then plotted onto that spline. This is called reverse or inverse kinematics, and it gives us a nice easy way of modifying an armature and setting the tip of it and letting all of the other bones follow. We can imagine this is an arm or a leg or even a torso really. So that's forward kinematics, where we just set it up so that if we move the root, everything else moves. And inverse or reverse kinematics, where when we move the tip to point to something, when we move the object that it's pointing at, everything else moves in line with that.